You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
What's up, my friends? Welcome back. What are we talking about today? Today we're talking about San Francisco doles out $16.1 million, 16.1 big ones, to provide 262 tents for homeless residents. So I just got through recording a podcast where we're spending $12 million in Seattle for 200 tents. So roughly about the same. Why is it so expensive? This is just crazy expensive. We're going to get into that and see where some of the costs are or not. This is nuts. Before we do, if you're new here, thanks for joining. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies. I read the news for reasonable people. You're reasonable. I'm reasonable. Let's read the news. Okay. San Francisco doles out $16.1 million to provide 262 tents for homeless residents. San Francisco is dealing with its homeless epidemic by spending $16.1 million for 262 tents, an investment that breaks down to $190 a night or $61,000 per tent per year. The tents will be placed in empty parking lots around the city, creating what officials are calling safe sleeping villages. The city will also provide food and other services. Okay, but it's a tent. Is that really that safe? I don't know if you've ever slept in a tent, hung out in a tent, been in a tent for a weekend at a festival. You leave your tent and you're like, that's a nylon tent. I can't really lock up anything in there. You could take a pair of nail file clippers and cut into a tent and get in there. Because nylon, not the world's strongest of materials, right? Just take a knife, you're in, take people's stuff, out you go. So safe sleeping villages. And then the other thought that comes to mind is, okay, put a bunch of homeless people there. They're all going to protect each other. Wait, no, they don't. They steal from each other. They rob each other. They assault each other. That's just what happens. If you follow the police blotter on Denny Park here in Seattle, you kind of know, that's some bad stuff that went down there. And that's why they eventually have to police come in and they do a sweep. They basically state, hey, for safety issues, we got to get all these tents out of our city parks, which should have never been there before. But because we love our fellow human beings so much, we just let them live wherever the F they want. Whether it's a sidewalk, in front of business doors, just convenience. We want to make it convenient for our fellow human beings to just pitch a tent wherever. The annual cost of one spot in one site is 2.5 times the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco, the San Francisco Chronicle reported. So 2.5 times the median rent for a one-bedroom. It's so crazy. It has to do with all the services, right? City leaders are under enormous pressure to address the city's swelling homeless population, which has become more worrisome and visible amid the pandemic as traditional shelters have had to cut their capacity and other services have been disrupted. But several officials said Wednesday that the tent program, which is not eligible for federal reimbursement, is staggeringly expensive and must be re-examined. We have to re-examine, we have to rethink this. So much re-examining, so much rethinking that nothing ever gets done, right? Let's rethink that. No, just go do something that makes sense. It's staggeringly expensive and must be re-examined, especially amid the $650 million budget deficit that San Francisco projects over the next 2 years. So massive budget deficit, spending money that is not going to get reimbursed by FEMA, but they got to do something, right? Same exact drill Seattle's in. All right, not a good look for the city. You got to do something. The $16.1 million allocated for the safe sleeping programs in the current budget is a fraction of the more than $300 million spent annually on homeless services. A 2018 ballot measure will probably raise an additional $250 million to $300 million per year. Ballot measure per year. Take care of the homeless people and the services. 𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒍𝒆 is an interim director of the city's homeless department. Stuart Kahn noted that the city had to scramble to create other options for the homeless as indoor shelters were closing early in the pandemic. She said officials did not have time to do a more thorough contract bidding process, which may have lowered operating costs. But really, how much are you really going to lower the bid? This is outrageously expensive, is it not? Or is this just government, how costs go with government? I talked earlier today about the, $5,000 wrench and the $10,000 toilet. And what was that? Was that NASA that had those items? Looking through a budget, hey, that's a really expensive toilet. Is that gold-plated? Nah, it's just a toilet the government picked up, and it's what we're bidding because we can, and we need to spend this money. You got to spend this money. No, that's not the case here. You got a budget deficit, as most big cities are going to have a budget deficit because that's what happens when you don't have your businesses open. You don't have tax revenue coming into businesses, flowing to the state, all that good stuff just got rocked this year, right? So had an explosion of the homeless epidemic. I mean, it's just happened, and it's happened in a lot of these cities. Seattle is not alone. Portland is not alone. San Francisco is not alone. This is just, it's happened because the homeless situation with coronavirus, CDC has said, hey, can't move those people. It's not safe to move them. Don't want to move them. So homeless people are like, aha, we can just post up here. And that's why you see all the stuff in Venice and California. You see like big, huge pieces of furniture because they can no longer come through and clean out the furniture. Now, at some point in time, you're going to have to do something about that. Earlier this year, I read a story about how one of the homeless tents caught on fire in Venice and burned a building down. They had to literally demolish it. And that was half a block off of the beach area there in Venice. Just horrible, just terrible. But you're going to see more and more of that because you've got literally communities living up against buildings, 10 after 10 after 10 after 10, and that's where they're living. And the governments are like, well, CDC says, we shouldn't move these people. And then you have a building burned down. I'm surprised more people haven't been killed, honestly, just by negligence or whatever. The sites are also on empty lots around the city. That's comforting. Hey, you got an empty lot next to you? Watch out. Might become tent city. So the sites are also on empty lots around the city, including outside of City Hall and at a city college parking lot south of Market. The issue I have with this is that this is not how zoning should go. You got an empty lot. As long as there's no buildings on it, throw a bunch of tents and we'll call it good. That is the exact opposite of the whole point of having zoning laws, right? You can't just willy-nilly, let's throw up a shelter there. Let's throw up a tent there. You got to have some kind of concerted effort that focuses on what are we going to do here? Instead of just, it's City Hall, City College parking lot. But they're playing such catch up on the whole homeless situation here in Seattle and all these other cities. They've just been overrun. They don't know what to do. And they're just like, we need to get some more whatever kind of housing we can. Here in Seattle, we're doing hotels and like little tiny mini houses. They look like sheds, but they're a roof and they're a door that people can lock. All right. Get that part, but outrageously expensive, right? And so including outside of City Hall and at City College parking lot south of Market, which required water and electrical hookups along with around-the-clock security. So that's where we start to run into some of the expenses. You got around-the-clock security, and then you've also got all the services that come in and service the homeless at these. I mean, these people are living in, they go from the streets to this kind of housing. Just a crazy way to live. Crazy way to live. And in the meantime, taxpayers are footing the bill for this, right? It's not just government. We are the government. We're the ones funding this stuff. It's eye-popping, and we need to understand why that is. San Francisco Supervisor Raphael Mandelman, who proposed legislation last fall to create more shelter options like safe sleeping villages, said, we have to find a way to have exits from the streets, but we need them to be more cost-effective than the safe sleeping program that the city has been running. That kind of just sounds like me talking. Hey, we got to get people off the streets, but there's got to be a way to do this less expensively. But what I've basically said is whenever you involve government, take that budget, triple it, quadruple it, quintuple it, whatever it is, make it really, really expensive, and then that's what we'll do. That seems to be, that's just the way I kind of see it. If you see it differently, if you think that the government in whatever your locale is doing a really great job, our government here in Bellevue does a great job. I can honestly say that. But then when you walk around on the streets, there's no tents. There's no graffiti. There's no garbage. Our leaders take care of stuff. Seattle, it's a bigger city. It's more urban. It's just got a lot more of this stuff going on. And we are the Seattle Real Estate Podcast, so that's why we talk about this stuff a lot. Plus, this does impact. People want to say, okay, but you're not being very, you're not being supportive of the homeless, and you're not being very, understanding of your fellow human being who has fallen on hard times. I get that, but I also come from a real estate background, which is this impacts housing directly. And when you have a bunch of tents infiltrate an area and a crime goes up, property values, even in Seattle, they're still going up, which is crazy. But you've also got a bunch of factors like jobs coming into the area. And guess what? There's a certain segment of people who are like, tents, I'm okay with that. Little Johnny finds a hypodermic needle at the park. I'm okay with that. Dodge the human fecal matter on the sidewalk. It's not that bad. You just dodge it. You got to work on your balance and your agility getting past the human fecal matter. That's not all a bad thing. It's almost like a CrossFit workout, right? There's a certain segment of people who live in Seattle that are just like, this is the Seattle experience and I'm okay with it. Same with San Francisco, right? I wouldn't want to live there, but a lot of people are willing to overlook this stuff and go, you know what? This is just kind of the urban experience. This is what I'm doing. This is where I want my kids to grow up. So many parents I talk to are like, Seattle got bad and we didn't want our kids to be taught in that school district. So we moved to Bellevue. If you can afford it. A lot of this is an affordability issue. Where can you find a home to live in? And, it's really expensive. In these West Coast cities, it is outrageously expensive just to live. And that's why I think, on top of the fact that a lot of these homelessness camps pop up in areas that are really expensive, it's because they're really expensive. You can't get housing, but city also takes care of you to a certain extent, meaning they won't kick you out. They're going to have services for you if you play by the rules. Yeah, it's dangerous living on the streets. But man, we got a town of 10,000 people in Seattle that are just like, I'm, like to get off the streets, but just don't seem to have any luck. I've been here 15 years and I'm doing my thing. That to me is heartbreaking, but it's also because we've given them that option. Hey, this is an option long-term that you can live with. We're going to give you clean needles. All right, so you got that squared away. Food, not an option. Not a problem. You can get food all day long. In Bellevue here, we've got, a Salvation Army. Is that? Yeah, Salvation Army. They hand out meals at 6 p.m. at a center not far from my home, and it's run really well, and it's clean, and there isn't garbage. But at 6 o'clock at night, see the lineup, and it's like, okay, those are people getting their food. We've made it pretty convenient for a lot of people to just kind of do their thing and rely on services and probably not deal with the underlying issues, which a lot of times are mental health care and addiction. We talk about that a lot because that is what's going on, and we don't seem to have any real solutions for that. So in the meantime, I got a lot of content to cover, right? This stuff just kind of keeps going on and on and on. I don't understand the people in the neighborhoods who aren't really doing much, or just I haven't seen as much as I thought I probably would media-wise, because some of these neighborhoods are being they're truly being impacted. People are not going to want to live there. And we had a lot of people ask me over this past year, God, it's coming up on a year now. We're in late March, and CHOP last year was in June. So we're coming up on a year. A lot of people ask me, well, what was the impact of CHOP on the housing market immediately surrounding the CHOP Park and that area? Well, the whole general Seattle market has just gone bonkers because of low interest rates and a lot of jobs coming in. So if you're okay with the Capitol Hill market, which has always kind of been a funky market, you're still buying homes there, you're still buying condos, and those prices are still going through the roof. It's nuts. And people want to hear, oh, there's foreclosures everywhere. Everybody's doing a short sale. People can't move their properties. And I've talked about this a lot, and you guys are probably tired of hearing about it, but it's only really, there's a overbuilding issue in some of the areas of downtown Seattle, South Lake Union, Capitol Hill. They've overbuilt some. You've got too many apartment units, too much multifamily housing, and that's going to be an issue. But you also can't give away a studio or a one bedroom because people don't want to hunker down in those during the Rona and just be confined to a tiny little space when they're living out of that space and all the other things they used to do are no longer open. Where Washington State, and maybe your state has too, wherever you're living, we've gone to phase 3. And I don't even talk about that stuff anymore because it's like, I don't even want to recognize that, okay, the animals are out of the zoo and we are allowing you to go to phase 3. I just find the whole thing just absolutely mind-numbingly ridiculous. It's like, okay, you're in phase 3 now, but if you're bad, we're going to move you back, which we've had happen, and very little evidence to kind of support, hey, these shutdowns are required. Look at all the states that have done the most horrific shutdowns. How is that working out for them? Yeah. Look at California. Maybe you're in California and you're like, yeah, this was just basically a terrible idea. And it has been. A little bit of shutdown. This has been just, and the election's over. And then all of a sudden, a lot of these shut down. Oh, we're just going to go back to normal. Never mind. How about, I will finish out this article at some point today, but how about, and a lot of this stuff just pops in my head. How about the whole switcheroo thing on the kids in cages at the border? You know, when Trump was in office, it was kids in cages. Now it's just overflow facility. Same thing. You've got kids who've come across the border by the thousands, literally the thousands, and they got to house them somewhere, and they're putting them in housing. It's got some cages on it because guess what? You got some security issues. When you've got basically illegal refugees coming in, got to house them somewhere. Yeah, they got some bars. So it's interesting that the media is basically spinning this from kids in cages to, this is an overflow facility, and we're diligently working towards providing solutions. You remember the picture where AOC was just like face in her hands up against the cyclone fence in a parking lot. I mean, this whole kind of thing it's just the spin the media has put on this stuff it's amazing. What I also find really amazing is that without Trump in the media doesn't really know what to do. He was such a vortex of energy for the media to focus on. Whatever he did was just terrible. It was awful. It was reprehensible. What are we going to do? The Orange Man bad. I mean, I found that whole thing just, amusing to a point, and then you just got to kind of turn it off because it's such ridiculousness. And Trump, a lot of times he didn't help. He would say stuff off the top of his head, and you're like, okay, 60% of that, you could have just cut it right there and you would have been just fine. Then you had to go that other 30 or 40, and that's when you lost people and everybody started making fun of you. But, give him credit. He said what he thought, did what he thought. Sometimes it worked out. Oftentimes it did not. But I'm not here to be critical about an ex-president. I'm here to be critical about the media and the way they're handling this. And I think they are literally at the moment looking around for stuff to cover, because the biggest story I saw about the current administration was President Biden falling up the stairs. I don't want to make fun of anybody falling down or anybody having physical difficulties. And Biden's actually in pretty good shape. I mean, he broke his foot or whatever it was chasing his dog around, but at least it wasn't falling over in the bathtub. You know what I mean? He had a legit reason. Chasing the family dog around, and he's physically, I think, in pretty good shape. He gets around pretty good. What is he, 78, something like that? I mean, he's not a spring chicken, shall we say, but he gets around pretty good. Where I'm concerned is the old noggin. And we haven't really seen much. Has he even, I don't even think he's had a press conference yet. Has he had a legit press conference? I don't think so. He's just been hunkered down doing who knows what. But it's kind of just this massive hole that we have in the news story. We don't have that. And the media is, I think, desperately looking right now for stuff to cover, to get eyeballs on, because we don't have Trump as our lightning rod for all this content anymore. Trump had opened up his mouth and, could you imagine if Trump fell up the stairs? Good Lord, that would have been just, president, agility issues, physically, could he be dying? I mean, that's how that storyline would have gone. The whole thing is just ridiculous. All right, let's get back here. Jennifer Friedenbach, executive director of the city's Coalition on Homelessness, said the tents are a good option during the coronavirus pandemic because they help prevent spread and provide more privacy than a cot in a shelter. And yet we don't have a lot of data saying that the homeless shelters have really been a cause of spread at all, right? I think here in Seattle, it's been very few cases. Are the homeless just, they deal with so much stuff in their environment? Maybe the coronavirus just kind of bounces off of them, and I don't know. It's crazy. But we do not think that that a tent is a permanent solution to homelessness, Friedenbach said in the Chronicle report. I agree. Have you ever spent the night in a tent multiple days in a row? After a while, your back is just like, oh my gosh, even with a good sleeping pad, maybe a high altitude pad so you can sleep on ice or snow. That's a lot of fun. Wake up in the middle of the night. Where am I? I'm on a slab of ice. Oh yeah. And I'm at an angle, and this is brutal. I was driving through downtown Seattle, before I went to Hawaii, so maybe early March. And, there was a big traffic issue. And so I was slowed down, looking around, and I look over at a hillside, and there was tents on, I kid you not, a super steep slope. And I'm like, why are they picking there of all places? Just setting up a tent on a mountain or a hillside, same thing. It's hard to do. And then sleeping in that, I mean, you want to sleep basically at an angle all night. You roll over, going down the hill. I mean, all your stuff falls to the bottom of the tent, giant pain in the ass. That's what living in a tent is. It's a giant pain in the ass. So I understand tent is not a permanent solution to homelessness, but it's the best they've got. And man, we are spending some money. San Francisco is spending 16.1 big ones for 262 tents for homeless residents. And so in reading this article, it's interesting. It's like, yeah, we need to understand why this is so expensive. And we kind of do. But then it's like, that's still outrageously expensive. Could we not be putting some of this money towards a more permanent solution? It feels like these cities should be getting together and figuring out game plan long term, right? I mean, doesn't it kind of seem like that would be a logical leap? It's not like homelessness is a new issue. It's not. It's been around forever. It's just gotten really bad during the coronavirus. And as people start going back into the downtown areas, a lot of these areas where there's homeless, I keep predicting you're going to have a clash of interests. You're going to have, homeless people, and you're going to have office workers going back. You're going to have homeless people doing their thing along those lines. You're going to have concert goers. You're going to have restaurant people wanting to go back and, visit their favorite restaurants, because we're starting to open up back now. It feels like we're opening up much more. That's here in Seattle. Maybe you guys have been opened up for a long time wherever you live. Maybe you never shut down. Let me know in the comments. If you've never shut down, I want to know what that's like, because, man, we've just been beat up here in Seattle. But, that's what you get when you've got the kind of political leadership that you're willing to live under. Keep looking at Florida. Florida seems like a pretty good option right now, right? But Seattle is a cool place to be in the summer for those 2 or 3 days out of the year that big yellow ball comes out and says, hello, Seattle. Those are pretty good days. And I jest that it's 2 or 3. It's probably more like 4 days, right? If you've been to Seattle in the summer, you know what I'm talking about. My power source is dying. What's going on here? All right, that's it for me on this one. This was kind of a long-winded, went in lots of different directions, kind of on a similar thread, but that's how some of these goes. So thank you for being here. Thanks for being part of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Love to have you subscribe if you so see fit in your life. If not, keep doing you. I'll do me. Meantime, we're still going to cover a bunch of these topics. That's what we're doing. We're reading the news for reasonable people. All right, that's it for me. I'll catch up with you guys in the next one. Bye for now. Until then, stay safe. Go out and do something fun. Go have some fun. Life is also about having fun, not just watching ridiculous people talk about stuff on the YouTube-ish, whatever. All right, catch up soon. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.